Hey guys, tonight we slip beneath the thick green ceiling of the Peten jungle, following a chalk-white causeway that glows like a fallen moonbeam at our feet. Torches crackle in your fist, insects fiddle out a syncopated lullaby, and, just out of sight, something with very sharp teeth coughs a warning that you probably won't survive this if you stray off the road. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what the clock says on your bedside table. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your sandals rasp over crushed limestone as you pace the ancient Sakbe, a raised road that once stitched the mighty city of Tikal into one shimmering tapestry of power and pilgrimage. A warm updraft carries the scent of copal resin, part bug repellent, part divine perfume, curling from the brazier of a passing acolyte. Above the leaves, the silhouette of Temple 4 spears the star-flecked sky, its 9 terraces stepping rhythmically toward the heaven. This stone colossus housed the tomb of a king who ruled centuries before the word internet could even dream of existing, and yet it still hums with purpose. Mainstream historians point out that Tikal, at its zenith between the 6th and 8th centuries CE, commanded more than 3,000 structures and perhaps 100,000 souls, a veritable metropolis of limestone and ambition. Tonight, though, it feels like the world's quietest concert hall. Cicadas chirr in the rafters, bats flicker in and out like ideas you can't quite remember, and every stone seems to breathe. As you pass under a kapok tree, low stelae flank the road, upright storybooks of glyphs and royal portraits. Historians still argue whether Tikal's founding dynasty imported nobles from distant Teotihuacan to legitimize its thrones, or merely carved that origin myth into stone for a touch of propaganda. Either way, the stern figures etched into the stelae glare across 1,200 years of history, daring you to keep walking. A quirky tidbit drifts on the warm air. Elite Maya, eager to outshine both insects and rivals, polished their skin with a paste of crushed annatto seeds and orchid oil until they glowed like fresh pottery in torchlight. You catch a hint of that earthy dye mingling with the richer aroma of roasted cacao beans, the beans that doubled as pocket change, gossip tokens, and in your case, the faint promise of staying awake. Your guide slows near a yawning black opening in the ground. This is a cholton, an underground cistern once plastered watertight to cradle pristine rainwater. Cool air sighs up the shaft, smelling of damp earth and old secrets. Some priests descended these steps at midnight to bathe before dawn rituals, the subterranean echo amplifying their whispered prayers into thunder. You resist peering down. You'd rather not meet whatever amphibious deity rents that basement apartment. The Sakbe widens, depositing you into the great plaza, silvered by moonlight. Temple 1, the temple of the Great Jaguar, looms ahead. Its 47-meter staircase so steep it feels more like an ancient heartbeat than architecture. Small ceramic bowls wait at the foot of the steps, each filled with obsidian blades, destined for bloodletting rites at sunrise. Relax. Participation is technically optional, though no one enjoys being the only person in the room with completely intact earlobes. You lower yourself onto a carved limestone bench once reserved for feather-mantled diplomats. The seat is warm as if it hoarded the day's sun just for you. Your fingertips trace the spiral of a glyph, perhaps the emblem of a long-gone ruler, perhaps an accountant's doodle. Overhead, Venus blinks, adored by Maya astronomers who recorded its cycles with astonishing accuracy on bark paper codices. One priest claimed the planet's morning rise predicted wars, another insisted it merely signaled a good day for new sandals. Scholarship and fashion, forever entwined. Wind threads through a palace roof, producing a low, flute-like note. You close your eyes, letting the tone wash over you until it feels like the city's own breath. Somewhere behind the western temples, water laps softly, an aguada, a broad reservoir carved straight into the porous limestone. Archaeologists dredging a similar basin recently found layers of brilliant blue pigment, evidence that priests once poured paint onto the water's surface to mirror the dawn sky and coax clouds to weep rain. Imagine tipping an entire jug of rare indigo into your swimming pool purely for theological decor. That's commitment. Suddenly a conch shell trumpet moans from a distant plaza, a signal that the horizon is about to peel open. The eastern edge of the jungle blushes lavender, then rose. Torches sputter one by one as bearers snuff them in respect for the incoming sun. You rise with the others, joints popping like small fireworks, and climb a low terrace for a better view. Cool mist brushes your shins, dew dampens the hem of your tunic. For a single breath the world hangs in perfect balance. Night not fully gone, day not yet convinced. Summerlaton spagarums. You inhale copal smoke, cacao steam, annatto musk, and the damp sweet green of living jungle. Somewhere among those mingled scents lies the promise of knife-tip offerings, feathered dances, and a ball game you'll swear was invented by sports channel gods. But that is for the coming chapters. Grey violet dawn unzips the horizon, and the eastern temples respond like well-trained choir members. First a hush, then a rising hum that seems to vibrate straight through your ribcage. The conch trumpet you heard a heartbeat ago now overlaps with the slow boom of slit drums, their hollow logs struck by priests who sway as if guiding the sun up its invisible ladder. You join a hush-footed procession moving toward Temple 1, where those obsidian bowls you noticed earlier gleam like polished night under the newborn light. High on the main staircase, nobles assemble in feathered capes that splay like small rainbows, macaw scarlets, quetzal emeralds, and the improbable blue plucked from cotinga birds. Even half awake, you realize this is not merely fashion, it is a billboard of status, flirting with both gods and neighbors. Below, novice attendants test the breeze with resin-laced torches, releasing serpentine ribbons of smoke that twist up the limestone like lazy spirits looking for breakfast. The court musician taps 2 notes on a clay whistle, and the first noble steps forward. She kneels, palms flat on the stone, and retrieves a stingray spine no thicker than a knitting needle. The Maya believed that personal sacrifice, especially blood drawn from the most sensitive regions, opened a doorway between worlds, an offering more intimate than gold or jade. Mainstream historians note that rulers often laced a silk cord with thorns and drew it through their tongues, the spilled blood absorbed by bark paper strips, later set aflame so the smoke could carry petitions skyward. You watch her wince, then exhale as if releasing a secret, crimson droplets blooming on the white limestone in a tiny constellation. A coughing jaguar breaks the stillness from somewhere in the understory, an audio reminder that you are a visitor in a kingdom where nature still owns all the backstage passes. You shift your weight, feeling the sack bay dust cling to your calves, and notice that even the attendants are participating. Small cuts on earlobes, a smear of bright red at a priest's hairline. Shared pain, shared devotion, shared bragging rights at the next plaza gossip session. Quirky tidbit incoming. One ruler reportedly tested devotion by dipping obsidian blades in pulverized chili and tree resin to cleanse them, meaning the first sting also delivered an aggressive spice rub. The logic? If you can't focus on the gods with your skin doing a salsa routine, you probably don't deserve divine attention. You silently thank every deity available that your role tonight is observational, not participatory. The rising sun ignites the obsidian, turning each blade into a shard of liquid fire. A priest wearing a jade mosaic mask lifts a bark paper bundle soaked in royal blood. Sparks leap, and thick white smoke barrels upward, coiling into shapes that look suspiciously like serpents devouring their own tails. Just below the main platform, a trio of scribes crouches with paintbrushes made of agouti whiskers, sketching swift glyphs on long strips of stuccoed plaster. They record names, titles, perhaps the volume of blood each noble offers. Bureaucracy never rests, even at sunrise. One scribe dips his brush into a pot of crimson made from crushed cochineal beetles and warm water. The colour is nearly identical to human blood, a pragmatic cheat for moments when the real stuff is too valuable to spare for art. You momentarily pity any beetle that thought breakfast would involve cactus juice and not bureaucratic paperwork. Now a hush ripples down the staircase. The ruler approaches. He wears a headdress so tall its plumes sway like a slow-motion tide. 2 attendants unfurl a jaguar pelt carpet beneath his bare feet. He draws an obsidian blade the size of a dessert spoon and positions it against the fleshy pad of his thumb. The crowd inhales as one, so audible you half expect the jungle's birds to shush them for the noise. One precise slice, a crimson pearl, and he presses the bead of blood onto a folded strip of amate paper. Then, with theatrical flair, he flicks the paper into a brazier, sending one last smoke dragon spiraling into the powder blue sky. The drums shift rhythm, a slow rolling heartbeat accelerating towards something you can't yet name. Priests sprinkle cacao shells and ground vanilla into the fire, turning the smoke suddenly sweet, a communal exhale easing tension. Children on the plaza's fringe mimic the ritual with reeds dipped in red clay, their tinier sacrifices winning amused smiles rather than divine favor. A gentle breeze sashays through, and you shiver at how quickly the morning warms the stone. Muscles in your legs buzz. You've been standing in reverent stillness longer than any modern meeting could hold your attention. Yet here, the minutes feel less like wasted time and more like beads on a rosary, each one clicked forward in purposeful devotion. You glance back at the blood splatters on the steps. Thin rivulets have merged into meandering lines that resemble the Usumacinta River carving valleys on a map. For the Maya, everything mirrored something else. Blood for rivers, smoke for clouds, stone for mountains, breath for wind. One priest descends, carrying a clay vessel sealed with corn dough. He cracks it against the stair, releasing a puff of steam that smells of atoll, a maize porridge laced with honey and chili. He offers sips to participants, a warm reward for their personal discomfort. When the ladle reaches you, the porridge coats your tongue in smoky sweetness, then surprises with a chilly prickle that wakes every taste bud. Breakfast, sacrament, and energy drink all in one modest cup. Above, the ruler raises his still stinging hand. The plaza falls silent. Yaxkin, he intones, first son, declaring the ceremony complete. Drums subside to a heartbeat's whisper. Birdsong fill the vacuum. Smoke from the dawn brazier still lingers in the crevices of Temple 1, when thin-robed adepts beckon you toward a terraced courtyard tucked behind a labyrinth of colonnades. Here the day belongs not to blades and feathers but to chalk dust, polished jade counting beads, and the quiet click-clack of intellect. You pass under a low lintel where the stone is worn into grooves by centuries of priestly shoulders. The passage smells faintly of damp stucco and crushed copal, a reminder that even numbers in this world arrive perfumed. Inside, a cedar table stretches like a canoe run aground, every inch covered with bark paper codices. Their cream-coloured surfaces bear ink so dark it drinks the light, rows of dots and bars aligned in hypnotic ladders. A senior calendar priest, his forehead flattened in the noble style, his hair braided into a metre-long plait, gestures for you to sit. You settle on a reed mat still warm from the morning sun, the woven fibres imprinting tiny grids onto the backs of your thighs, as if inviting you to become a living spreadsheet. He begins by flipping open a codex to reveal columns of swirling glyphs, punctuated by tiny jade discs. Mainstream historians adore this moment. Here lies the evidence that the Maya grasped the concept of zero centuries before much of the civilized world even suspected a placeholder's power. The priest places a carved shell in the column's blank oval, zero made tactile, and explains, in a whisper softer than moth wings, how nothingness itself keeps the cosmos from toppling like overstacked pottery. You nod sagely, pretending this makes your own finances clearer. Above the courtyard, a thatched observatory dome pokes through blooming bougainvillea. Thin rays of sunlight dart through slits in the roof, illuminating only the table's centre, as if the sky is spotlighting today's lesson. The priest slides a fresh sheet of bark paper your way and invites you to replicate the Tzolk'in, the sacred 260-day calendar. He taps 2 knuckles, 13 numbers, 20-day glyphs, interlocking like gears in a jade timepiece. With a charcoal stylus, you draw the first dot, 1 emix, the day of birth, crocodiles, and inconveniently large appetites. Your line trembles, producing a dot more peanut than perfect circle. But he smiles. Precision matters less than participation. A quirky tidbit surfaces as his apprentice scurries up, balancing a lacquered gourd filled with pulped pitaya fruit. The neon magenta drink stains their lips, and they explain, somewhat sheepishly, that astrologers always sip pitaya before calculations, because its tiny black seeds, resemble the night sky's unblinking eyes. One priest even claimed the drink sweet talks Venus into punctuality. You raise the gourd, take a cautious swig, and feel seeds tick across your tongue like minute stars. An eccentric smoothie and a celestial bribe in one. The scholar moves on to the Hab, the 365-day solar count that pairs neatly with agricultural chores. He traces chisel-thin fingers over glyphs for pop, war, and sip, explaining how farmers synchronize maize plantings to the sun's path, just as merchants time canoe launches to river floods. You catch an undertone of pride. These numbers are not abstract, they are the backbone of survival, ensuring that sunrise rituals and chili-flecked chocolate stalls occur in divine harmony. While you work, acolytes pace the courtyard's perimeter, turning giant stone drums, water clocks really, whose sloshing echoes give each task a measured soundtrack. One acolyte chalks Venus sightings onto a panel the size of a bedsheet. Venus's 584-day cycle slides against the Hab and Zolkin like two rattles in a gourd, intersecting every 104 years, a span the Maya called a calendar round. Your own grasp of leap years suddenly feels less impressive. Mid-sketch, the senior priest pauses, eyebrows arching above a jade nose ornament. Historians still argue whether the universe began on 4 Ahau 8 Kumku, he murmurs, pointing to an ancient long count date that equates to August 11th, 3114 BCE in our Gregorian reckoning, or whether that was merely when the gods hit save on their favorite storyline. His lips twitch in gentle sarcasm, and you realize scholars aren't the only ones who enjoy a cosmic punchline. He unrolls another codex depicting the infamous Monument 6 from Tortuguero, the stone many modern thrill-seekers misread as forecasting the 2012 apocalypse. The priest laughs quietly, fingering the rubbing's faded glyphs. If scribes predicted cataclysm, he says, they also penciled in tomorrow's tamale menu. The hum of nearby water clocks seems to applaud his point, droplets marking seconds that keep failing to end the world. Sunlight shifts, a fresh beam stabs the table edge, and lands on a stack of counting beads. The apprentice seizes the moment to demonstrate how 20 beads form a pocket-sized abacus. One slide left, another forward, and suddenly you're converting long count dates into lunar cycles faster than any modern calculator deprived of its battery. A bead tumbles free, startling a green iguana lurking under the mat. The reptile bolts, scattering scrolls. Everyone laughs softly, grateful for the interruption, but also because an iguana cameo is rumoured to ward off scribal eye strain. Your host produces a final teaching aid, a conch shell drilled with 5 tiny holes. When blown, it releases separate notes that merge into a chord, mimicking the celestial harmonics believed to echo between Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. The priest hands you the shell, urging a gentle breath. You comply, exhaling a chord so low and warm it vibrates against your sternum like the memory of that dawn drumbeat on the blood-slick steps. Stars visible even in daylight? Perhaps not, but the courtyard's birds spin mid-air as though the sky just hummed their favourite lullaby. Quills scratch parchment, water clocks slosh, bougainvillea petals pirouette down onto your doodled glyphs, a confetti of slow-motion celebration. The senior priest gathers the codices you've smeared with pitaya fingerprints and nods approval. Remember, he whispers, numbers are polite. They always greet one another the same way. Then he traces a spiral in the air. But they also dance. With calculations complete, you rise, legs tingling like they've borrowed too many calendar rounds themselves. The sun now floods the courtyard, warming the columned walls until they smell of baked limestone and distant rain. Clay whistles call afternoon vendors. Their melody reminds you that somewhere near the ball court, rubber warms for a game whose stakes might include a head, though no one can agree whose. One last glance at the codex pages, and you commit to memory the orderly rows of dots, bars, and shells. They feel oddly soothing, as if bedtime could be computer and guaranteed. Stepping back through the low lintel, you re-enter Tikal's bustling arteries, carrying a new appreciation for zero, pitaya diplomacy, and cosmic choreography. The blood-tinged dawn might have shaken you awake, but these sacred numbers begin the slow work of lulling you toward the deeper dreams yet to come. You drift from the quiet geometry of sacred numbers into the furnace breath of midday, following a pulsing thump that sounds like an oversized heartbeat ricocheting between walls. The canopy thins, and there it is. The ball court, a limestone canyon whose slanted sides rise taller than a 3-story house. The thump you hear is rubber striking stone, then rubber striking flesh, then the collective gasp of spectators unsure whether to cheer or cringe. Your footsteps slow automatically. This arena commands respect the way a thundercloud commands silence. A player streaks past, torso slick with sweat that glitters like fresh rain on obsidian. He wears a thick leather yoke around his waist and padded arm guards laced with woven cotton. No hands or feet allowed. Elbows, hips, and occasionally a daring shoulder must coax the 5-kilogram ball along. Mainstream historians call the game pits or pok-to-pok, and murals at Chichen Itza prove it bounced through Mesoamerica for at least 3 millennia. You suspect no Bluetooth speaker has ever produced a bass as satisfying as that rubbery boom now echoing in your chest. Rubber, you soon learn, is no jungle freebie. A girl selling toasted corn kernels explains between mouthfuls that craftsmen tapped latex from Castilla elastica trees and mixed it with juice from morning glory vines to create a polymer long before the word polymer existed. The concoction yields a ball dense enough to bruise bone yet lively enough to kiss the sky each time it ricochets off a hip. She pops a kernel and adds, matter of fact, that a single ball can survive dozens of matches, or one really unlucky head. You decide to chew thoughtfully rather than laugh too loud. Courtside, a priest sprinkles copal onto a brazier, perfuming the air with the same sweet smoke that seasoned dawn bloodletting. The smell lingers in players' hair, mingling with adrenaline into a scent you file as sacred locker room. A carved stone marker midway up the wall displays a macabre scoreboard. 2 crossed bones beneath a stylized sun disk. Quirky tidbit, archaeologists in Veracruz once unearthed elbow pads stuffed with crushed chili peppers, warrior aromatherapy or strategic intimidation. Either way, you imagine each dive raising a spicy cloud, a nasal reminder that pain can always sing an octave higher. A sudden cheer yanks your attention upward. The rubber comet flips off a player's hip, spirals toward a stone ring mounted absurdly high on the north wall, and misses by a hair's breadth. The crowd oohs in a sigh so unified it ripples your tunic. Historians still argue whether scoring through that ring ended the match instantly or merely granted cosmic bragging rights, but everyone agrees that threading such a shot is rarer than a quetzal feather in a chicken coop. The player who tried palms his yoke in frustration, then flashes a grin at the rival team's captain, an unspoken promise to try again. Stone bleachers on either side host a mosaic of chatter. Merchants hawk spiced cacao, its steam swirling like miniature cumulonimbus clouds. An elder balances a platter of roasted grasshoppers, dusted with lime, their little legs splaying like confetti. You crunch a couple, discovering they taste oddly like sour popcorn. Children practice phantom swings in the aisles, using gourds as pretend balls, their giggles ricocheting against the architecture's perfect acoustics. Every bounce, shout, and whistle returns amplified, as if the gods themselves enjoy surround sound. The match intensifies. Players hurl themselves sideways, torsos parallel to the ground, landing with a meaty slap that makes the crowd wince. Dust plumes rise, linger, and drift lazily across the sunlight shafts. One athlete somersaults to save a wild rebound, his braids smacking the court in sync with the ball. You catch a flicker of jade beads woven into his hair, tokens of luck, or possibly the spectator beside you whispers, down payments on afterlife insurance. A chalk logging attendant redraws boundary lines with quick flicks, replacing smudged edges like a painter fixing daylight. Between rallies, drums positioned at the court's 4 cardinal points throb a syncopated pulse, guiding players' rhythm and audience anticipation. The priest with the brazier recites under his breath, synchronizing each syllable to the bounce. You overhear snippets, references to Hun Hunappu, the mythic ball player, decapitated so the sun could rise, and Xibalba, the Maya underworld that apparently books front row seats. The cosmic stakes unfurl. Keep the ball in play, and you enact the sun's perpetual journey. Drop it, and risk cosmic darkness. No pressure. Your mind wanders back to dawn's blood droplets drying on Temple 1, wondering how often life here oscillates between personal sacrifice and ecstatic sport. The observation feels profound until a vendor sidles up, sloshing a tole again. Maize porridge spiked with honey, and, yes, another whisper of chili. You sip, grateful for the warmth, and notice your own pulse sinking to the drumbeat and rubber thuds. A lullaby draped in adrenaline. Then it happens. A perfect pass arcs from one captain's hip, collides with his teammate's shoulder, and careers high toward the rim. The sphere tumbles end over end, a black sun rolling through a grey sky. It splashes clean through the stone ring, no clink, no scrape. Just the quiet whoosh of impossible accuracy. Silence detonates across the bleachers. Jaws drop, lungs forget their duties. Even the jungle birds pause mid-call. A split heartbeat later, the arena erupts. Children shriek, elders slap stone benches. The priest tosses a double handful of copal so exuberantly that a fireball whooshes up, painting both walls with light. Players storm together, foreheads pressing, shoulders shaking in exhausted laughter. Whether the game ends or continues is academic now. Everyone has already archived the memory in whatever spiritual hard drive tracks moments worth retelling. You rub your forearm, feeling goosebumps rise like tiny glyphs. Proof that sometimes history's softest pillows are stuffed with thunder. The sun leans westward, casting long shadows that swallow half the court, cooling the limestone but not your racing thoughts. You step away, weaving through celebratory knots of betters settling debts with cacao beans and jade beads. A boy tugs your sleeve, offering a miniature rubber ball sculpted from court scrapings. You accept, its tacky surface warm like a freshly baked tortilla. Pocketing the token, you inhale one last lungful of sacred locker room air, sweat, copal, chili, and the distant memory of pitaya seeds. As you leave, the drums fade to a heartbeat level, then soften further until they blend with forest cicadas. Your own pulse decelerates, replacing the earlier spike with a measured thrum that feels like a lullaby on repeat. The ball game's echoes remain lodged behind your eardrums, but they've mellowed into rhythmic applause encouraging rest rather than rivalry. And somewhere deep inside, you start tallying your own cosmic scorecard. 0 pierced earlobes, 0 calendar errors, and 1 perfect courtside nap waiting in the near future. The ball court's thunder still hums in your bones as you drift into the market district, that buzzing hive where the day's true games unfold. No rubber ball required, just sharp tongues, brighter fabrics, and the intoxicating smell of roasted cacao. Woven awnings stretch overhead like patchwork sails, dappling the sunlight into soft mosaics that melt across your shoulders. Here the sacred meets the ordinary. Incense smoke from dawn's bloodletting mingles with steam rising off tamales, and gossip flits faster than any rubber sphere ever could. You ease between stalls draped in cotton the colour of macaw wings, each bolt weighted at the corners with raw jade chunks to keep the breeze from stealing inventory. Traders beckon with theatrical whispers, feather dyes, obsidian razors. Each offer a tiny audition for your attention. One elderly matron waves a bracelet of polished spondylus shell beneath your nose. It smells faintly of salt and ambition. You remember the blood on Temple 1's steps and wonder whose pulse will fund her next shipment. Mainstream historians love to quote that cacao beans doubled as currency and the market proves it. Everywhere you look, transactions clink in soft, papery cascades. A handful of beans for a clay whistle, 2 dozen for a bolt of cotton, a small fortune for a curved obsidian blade wicked enough to shave ego from skin. A boy selling chili-dusted oranges holds out his woven pouch so you can appreciate the currency's weight. It feels surprisingly light for something powerful enough to bankroll a kingdom's mid-afternoon snack. You pause at a cacao grinder's stall, where a young woman kneels beside a basalt metate. With practiced rolls of her stone mano, she coaxes a glossy paste from roasted beans, tossing in pinches of ground chili and wild vanilla. The aroma lifts you by the nostrils, and before you can protest, she urges a painted gourd into your hands. You sip. Liquid velvet sluices over your tongue, first bittersweet, then a back of throat burn that pries your eyelids wider than zero ever could. She winks, explaining that royal scribes swear by this blend during all-night calendar debates. Fuel for brainwork and subtle revenge on anyone allergic to capsicum. A few stalls down, a lanky merchant unfurls a jaguar pelt and proudly points out each rosette's symmetry. Quirky tidbit, he swears his brother-in-law once traded an entire canoe of pelts for a live scarlet macaw, planning to teach it market lingo so the bird could haggle on his behalf. The scheme ended when the macaw learned only one phrase, "too expensive," and squawked it at every potential buyer until the merchant nearly wept. You glance skyward, half expecting a heckling flash of red feathers, but only a polite vulture circles, waiting for less animated bargains. Clusters of women in turquoise repeals gossip over piles of achiot seed, their laughter fluttering like the bougainvillea petals that dotted the calendar courtyard. Between their feet, toddlers chase a runaway iguana, perhaps the same scribal eye strain mascot from earlier, while merchants pretend not to notice the chaos squeaking under their price lists. You sidestep the reptilian sprint and duck beneath a string of drying gourds painted with glyphic advertisements. Fresh honey, new obsidian, and, charmingly, official tournament-grade rubber. The ball game's echo replies inside your skull, and you reflexively pat the miniature ball warming your pocket, the souvenir now bouncing alongside your heartbeat. Mid-aisle, a trio of travelling traders hoist wicker backpacks so tall they resemble walking armoires. They hail from distant highlands, judging by their feather-trimmed boots and the faint smell of pine sap. One spreads a cloth to display chunks of translucent obsidian as dark as moonless midnight and as sharp as guilt. He demonstrates by slicing a lime in silence. Juice spurts like gossip, and he nods as though the fruit's surrender is the only endorsement necessary. Historians still argue whether these itinerant merchants, often titled popolom, served purely commercial roles or doubled as diplomatic eyes and ears for rival kingdoms. Watching him pocket cacao beans with one hand, while mapping every face in the crowd with the other, you lean toward the espionage theory. A sudden commotion draws you to a platform where a perfumer fans smoke over an earthen pot. She sprinkles crushed night-blooming jasmine petals into melted copal, releasing a fragrance so heady it hushes even the macaw-free sky. Shoppers queue for a dab of scent said to soothe nightmares. She dabs a smear on your wrist. It blurs the sharper market aromas into something velvety and calm, like sliding under a cotton blanket still warm from the sun. You breathe deep and, for a beat, almost nod off standing. Commerce as lullaby. Who knew? Behind you, a vendor plucks tight coils of blue cotton thread from a loom and boasts that each skein is destined for elite sashes worth more than a minor shrine's yearly incense budget. He leans in, lowering his voice. We soak the thread in a secret indigo bath with snail mucus, locks in colour for 100 washes. You blink, sip more chili cacao, and decide that beauty's price tags are sometimes best left blurry. An apprentice scribe, eyes lined with pulverised charred seed for sun glare reduction, approaches, offering slivers of dried honeycomb studded with cacao nibs. You chew the brittle sweetness and mull over the equation you can now crunch in sleep. Honey plus caffeine equals one very awake dreamer. The scribe confides that he and his friends keep score of market rumours on scrap bark, betting which tale will make tomorrow's mural. Latest odds say a noble from Calakmul arrived incognito to scout jade prices. True or not, the potential for headline glyphs keeps everyone's tongues wagging. Stall shadows lengthen as the sun leans west, painting the awnings gold. Vendors chant last-minute deals. 2 gourds for 1! Free chili upgrade! You linger at a pottery table, where the artist etches feather motifs, reminiscent of the quetzal plumes you admired on Temple Eye. With deft strokes, she carves a tiny serpent winding through the feathers. A callback to the smoke dragons you watched coil skyward at dawn. She hands you the vessel to inspect. The clay's warmth seeps into your palm, and somewhere between the serpent's curves and the familiar scent of jasmine on your wrist, your pulse eases into a slower rhythm. Soon drums in the plaza signal the king's fire dance will ignite after sunset, and merchants begin mothfolding their awnings. You clutch a woven pouch filled with cacao beans, jade beads, and one snail mucus length of indigo thread. Receipts for a day spent tasting history's quiet extravagance. As you step from the marketplace toward the glow of torches lining the main sack bay, the din recedes into a soft, velvety hush. The chili's afterburn lingers, warming your throat like an ember. The jasmine hums at your pulse points, and the marketplace buzz rearranges itself into a lullaby disguised as commerce. Your feet find the limestone path, and each step knocks loose another particle of tension. A natto-tinted dusk reddens the sky, and the distant memory of bloodletting, calendar math, and rubber victories blends into a single, pleasantly exhausted exhale. The king's midnight fire dance awaits, but for now, the simple rustle of cacao beans in your pouch counts seconds smoother than any water clock. Marketplace secrets, it turns out, are the softest mattress, stuffed not with feathers, but with whispers, chilly kisses, and the promise of chocolate-rich dreams. Night descends with velvet inevitability, and the sack bay ahead shimmers under torchlight, like a runway for moths and monarchs alike. You fall into step behind a column of palace attendants whose conch shell lanterns swing low, splashing stripes of orange across the limestone. Each breath you take tastes of two things: sweet copal and the faint ghost of chili cacao still clinging to the back of your throat. The marketplace hum now feels like a half-remembered dream, replaced by an expectant hush that makes even jungle cicadas hold their breath. The palace terrace rises before you, its balustrades studded with obsidian inlays that catch firelight and fling it back as glittering Morse code. Looming at the centre is the king's throne platform, 4 meters high, dressed in jaguar pelts so meticulously tanned they still look ready to pounce. Servants kneel at each corner, feeding chunks of pitchy resin into braziers whose flames dance green and blue, a chemistry lesson disguised as pageantry. Mainstream historians note that Maya coronation rites often unfolded at night, aligning royal ascension with the moment Venus kisses the horizon. A celestial nod to sovereignty you now witness in real time as the planet winks through the palm fronds. A herald strikes a turtle-shell drum, its hollow boom ricocheting across the plaza and up through the dark like an echo chasing the stars. Then the royal entourage emerges. Nobles in feathered capes, scribes clutching folded codices, and finally the new Ajor, face hidden behind a jade mosaic mask, so precisely fitted, it appears grown, not worn. He moves deliberately, shoulders squared under a mantle sewn with quetzal plumes that glow electric green whenever they flirt with firelight. The crowd presses forward, yet no one dares break the fragile stillness. Even the toddlers from the marketplace seem spellbound, their sticky fingers now silent witnesses. 2 high priests lead the way, one jingling a belt strung with seashells, the other carrying a torch taller than you and topped with a bundle of aromatic herbs. They circle the platform sunwise 3 times, leaving rings of smoke that drift upward like lazy halos. Quirky tidbit: the shell belt priest sports ear spools carved from fossilized shark teeth, an accessory rumored to amplify whispered prayers straight to a sea god's voicemail. You wonder if spiritual reception is better underwater. The Ajor ascends the jaguar pelt steps, each footfall releasing a muted cough of dust and fur scent. He faces the assembly, hands outstretched, while attendants unfurl an embroidered banner above his head. Moonlight catches gold threads that depict Kawil, the lightning deity, thrusting a serpent scepter skyward. Historians still argue whether the king embodied Kawil at accession or merely borrowed the god's branding for publicity. No small difference when your divine resume decides tax rates. A hush, deeper than marketplace pockets, descends. Then, the high priest with the torch plunges it into a waiting clay urn loaded with copal, pine resin, and a braid of indigo-soaked cotton. Flames roar skyward, painting the king's jade mask in ripples of orange, blue, and sudden green. Sparks leap high enough to worry a nearby palm. Attendants quickly fan the fronds with turkey wings until they settle into respectable awe. The air thickens, fragrant enough to taste, and you realize you're inhaling history's most expensive perfume. The drummer returns, but this time the beat is slower, heart rate slow, guiding every eye toward the king's hands. He lifts a stone scepter, shaped like a two-headed serpent, tilts it so the carved mouths catch torchlight, and then lowers it until each serpent head bites the crown of his own bare foot. Blood follows the grooves down the jade, crimson and gleaming. The crowd exhales as one, you included, remembering Dawn's more democratic bloodletting and noting that leadership here clearly comes with a persistent hazard pay. A scribe kneels and unfurls amate paper to catch the falling drops before they darken the jaguar pelts. He folds the sheet, sets it ablaze, and wafts the smoke into the king's mask eye holes. The symbolism is almost too on the nose. Rule requires vision, and vision is literally fueled by one's life force. You blinked away tears, not from sentiment, but from resin smoke curling under your eyelids like mischievous snakes seeking cozy dens. Then, music erupts. Shell trumpets blare a gliding melody, while bone flutes stitch trills between the notes. Dancers flood the plaza in concentric rings, first nobles, then warriors, then children, and you're gently ushered into the outermost circle before you can invent an excuse. The steps are simple. 2 forward, pivot, 2 back, raise arms like maize stalks greeting rain. Your sandals shuffle against limestone still warm from sunset, and somewhere behind the mask, the new king mirrors your movements, jade teeth flashing each time he spins. A flash of turquoise catches your eye. The girl from the cacao stall twirls past, now wielding a clay censer that spits sparks every time she dips and swirls. She grins recognition, mouthing something that might be sleep tight or might be don't trip. But her words dissolve into drum beats before they reach you. The dance quickens. Torches orbit overhead, flinging sparks that briefly imitate constellations. The shellbelt priest's accessory rattles like applause, punctuating the dancer's stomps. Venus now hangs low on the western lip of the sky, and someone behind you murmurs that this is the best omen. A king crowned under Venus's evening aspect will guide commerce and creativity. Another neighbour scoffs, claiming only the morning star guarantees martial strength. Clearly, coronation parties double as celestial debate clubs. You decide both arguments sound equally convincing under sufficient jasmine copal haze. Mid-whirl, an acolyte threads through the crowd offering cups of bolkeh, a honeyed tree bark brew that fizzes softly like fermented rainwater. You accept, sip, and feel your limbs loosen until each pivot becomes a lazy dream loop, nearly as smooth as numbers lining up on the Zolkin. Bolkeh's faint sweetness melds with smoke and percussion, transforming the entire plaza into a single pulsing organism. One heartbeat, one breath, one slow exhale aimed at the gods. At the dance's fever pitch, the king raises the serpent scepter once more. Drums silence in mid-thump, flutes cut off, and dancers freeze like an intricate mosaic instantly petrified. In that pause you can hear the crackle of braziers, and farther away the sleepy grumble of a howler monkey registering its complaint with the moon. The Ejor lowers the scepter, the musicians release a final triumphant chord, and suddenly everything unclenches. Dancers laugh, drummers resume an easy shuffle rhythm, and attendants dash in with bowls of cool water for blistered feet. Celebration has shifted from sacred rite to well-earned after-party. You step aside, bracing a hand against the limestone wall to steady the world's gentle spin. Resin smoke now hangs low like a down comforter, thick but strangely comforting. A hand presses a cool obsidian cup into yours, straight water this time, shockingly clean. You drink, recalling pitaya seeds, ballgame thunder, and market chit-chat, each memory now stitched into a quilt you'll pull over your dreams later. Somewhere a conch sounds last call, signaling that royal duties resume at dawn. Servants guide the jade-masked king toward the palace interior, his headdress bobbing like a green comet disappearing into foliage. Flames in the braziers settle to coals, and the crowd disperses along torch-lit paths, shoes scuffing up clouds of sweet-smelling dust. You inhale slowly, feeling fatigue slip into your muscles like ink seeping through bark paper. The coronation may have crowned a monarch, but it also draped you in a kind of ceremonial drowsiness, as if Venus herself handed you a weighted blanket studded with stars. With one last look at the embers painting the night air in gentle waves of gold, you turn back toward your lodging, guided by faint drum echoes and the soft rustle of indigo-dyed thread inside your pouch. At first light, you follow a pattering of reed sandals toward the painter's compound, passing walls that glow pale peach beneath fresh sunrise. Yesterday's coronation smoke still clings to your tunic, and the scent blends oddly well with damp lime wash, a reminder that in Tikal, art and incense share breakfast. The plaza hush gives way to gentle tapping, stone chisels nibbling tablets, wooden mallets coaxing pigment from rock. It's a different kind of drumbeat, quieter than the ball court thunder, but equally relentless, like termites politely rewriting eternity, one glyph at a time. The passage narrows into what looks like an oversized beehive. Low vaulted chambers, whose lime-plastered walls curve overhead in perfect arches. Inside, torchlight flickers over frescoes half-finished, mythic scenes locked in mid-gesture until another layer of pigment and another pot of gossip arrives. A master painter in a skirt spattered crimson and indigo greets you with a nod. Then, with the gravity of a surgeon, he dips a pelican bone stylus into a seashell of powdered hematite. The bone squeaks across plaster, outlining the talon of a sky serpent who, judging by its side-eye glare, doesn't appreciate being paused mid-snack. Mainstream historians adore murals like these from sites such as Bonampak, narrative panels bursting with trumpeters, captives, and jaguar pelt thrones. Yet here you see the work mid-construction, pigment still wet enough to smudge dreams. An apprentice explains that red comes from hematite, blue from indigo-infused paligorskite, and yellow from ground marigold petals. Sunset bottled in powder form. You lean in, finding tiny fingerprints where someone tested saturation. Artisans, it seems, leave Easter eggs for future archaeologists. A rhythmic thock, thock, thock lures you deeper into the chamber. In a side alcove, stone scribes sit cross-legged, chiseling glyph blocks the size of hardbound novels. Each tap flicks a curl of limestone into the air, dust motes swirling like pitaya seeds you sipped 2 sunsets ago. Their chisels are obsidian-tipped and handle-wrapped with deer sinew, tools sharp enough to shame any fountain pen. One scribe pauses, wipes dust on his forearm, then blows a perfect plume that drifts into the torchlight like a firefly lost in thought. You crouch beside him, watching characters emerge, stacked bars, precise dots, and curving heads crowned with scrolls of breath. He's carving what will become a date, 9/16/410/8, 12 Lamat 11 Yaks, though your fresh memory of 0 placeholders hardly prepares you for the tactile drama of stone yielding to math. Historians still argue whether scribes worked strictly by royal commission or pursued side projects, early fan fiction if you will, sneaking family jokes into state propaganda. The scribe meets your gaze and winks. You suspect this block hides at least one punchline. An apprentice confesses that whenever a glyph stone cracks mid-carve, they bury it by the western wall to appease Pawatun, patron of scribes, who is rumoured to chew on misprints the way you chew chili-dusted grasshoppers. Somewhere outside, a dog barks, perhaps Pawatun, checking inventory. Back in the paint chamber, the master lifts a gourd of fresh stucco, spreading it like butter over a blank panel. He invites you to press your hand lightly into the wet surface, for texture, he claims. The plaster is cool and forgiving. You leave a faint ripple, then watch as he brushes it out almost immediately. Legacy is earned, not gifted, his grin seems to say. Instead, he hands you a bundle of turkey feathers bound into a makeshift brush. Sky background, he instructs. Your strokes wobble, producing clouds that resemble spilled cacao more than stratocumulus. but the apprentices clap politely. Art, you decide, is 90% confidence and 10% secret feather hacks. A shelf nearby brims with paint pots, sealed by leaf plugs. One labelled, "Shell White, Don't Drink," catches your eye. The apprentice sighs, recounting how a novice once mistook the lime suspension for thick atole. The result? A stomach lining whiter than any mural to date. You file that under recipes to avoid, ranking just above chili-laced stingray spines. Torch smoke drifts upward, following roof vents carved into stylized serpent mouths. Through one, sunlight spears the room, illuminating a mural segment depicting twin hero gods playing ball with the severed head of an underworld lord. Glorious, if anatomically ambitious. The colours glow alive under the beam, and for a moment you swear the painted crowd shuffles, adjusting for a better view. The master painter steps back, squints, and dabs a bit of malachita green onto the serpent's crest. He mutters to himself, "Paint too thick," then adds a droplet of honey to thin the mixture. You recall the jasmine copal nightmare repellent and marvel at this civilization's ability to remix pantry staples into pigment, perfume, or potion at will. An apprentice hauls in a cylinder of wood strapped with jaguar hide. Portable drum meets rolling pin. He sets it under the fresh stuccoed wall and begins to roll, imprinting faint guidelines for the next scene. Maize gods rising from earth like seedlings. The rhythm is soft yet persistent, a rumble reminiscent of ball-court drums, now repurposed for composition. You realize even guidelines here have rhythm. Art doesn't just sit, it sways. The scribes finish their glyph block, and with grunts of teamwork, hoist it upright to test fit against an existing frieze. Your earlier zero lessons blur in your memory, but the pattern clicks. Day name, coefficient bar, dot, deity head. To your relief, no cracks appear. Powatoon gets no snack today. The lime fumes mix with torch resin, coaxing your eyelids heavier. The master painter notices and offers a clay cup of cacao, sans chili this round, for smooth brush strokes and smoother dreams, he insists. You sip, is milder, almost floral, and the warmth flows through your arms to fingertips still aching from turkey feather clouds. A bell carved from a human femur chimes outside, signalling mid-morning. The apprentices pack pigments, cork paint pots, and drape damp panels with banana leaves to slow drying. Work pauses, but murals keep breathing, trapped exhalations shimmering whenever the torchlight shifts. You sense that the silent scribes and talkative painters are partners in lullaby manufacture. Every glyph, every shade, a syllable of a story meant to sing future generations to sleep, just as it coaxes your pulse into a slower cadence now. As you exit, the master presses a palm-sized shard of fired clay into your hand. It bears a single spiral glyph meaning breath or speech, depending on context, a souvenir from artisans who weave both into walls. You tuck it beside your miniature rubber ball and indigo thread, proof that stories here can be held, rolled, or worn, but always told softly enough to enter dreams. Sunlight greets you outside, filtered through ceiba branches. The hammer taps fade behind you, replaced by leaf rustle and distant laughter from yet another market haggle. Your pockets jingle faintly, clay shard, cacao beans, jade beads, each item a footnote whispering, "Remember us tonight when the moon climbs." And you will, because these murals, glyphs and silent scribes have already begun ghost painting the inside of your eyelids. You climb Temple 4 long after the midday heat has wilted into a lavender hush, each limestone step still faintly warm like embers banked beneath the night. A slim rope rail helps, but mostly you pull yourself upward by willpower and a rising curiosity about the heavenly bureaucracy that keeps Tikal's calendars honest. The higher you go, the more jungle sounds flatten into a muffled carpet, howler monkeys, parakeets, even the soft argument of traders packing up cacao stalls. At last you crest the summit platform and step onto a kind of open-air observatory. Nothing but stars overhead and a neat row of sighting stones lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. Your guide tonight is a wiry astronomer whose hair shines with copal oil and, quirky tidbit incoming, whose eyelids are lightly dusted with crushed pearl to cut horizon glare. He greets you in a whisper, because up here even the wind seems to eavesdrop on calculations. A flat slab in the platform's centre bears shallow grooves. Align a star through 2 stones, run a fingertip along the groove, and you've just bookmarked the cosmos. He hands you a polished obsidian shard, part mirror, part protractor, and invites you to try. When you crouch behind the rear stone, your heart quickens. Venus lounges on the western rim of the sky, bright enough to cast a peanut-sized glare in the shard's surface. You nudge the mirror until Venus nests inside a carved notch, then glance down. The groove points arrow true toward a smaller stone at the platform's edge, proof that someone centuries ago plotted this exact alignment, anticipating your sleepy gaze across unimaginable nights. Mainstream historians love to point out that Maya astronomers tracked Venus's 584-day synodic cycle with such precision that the Dresden Codex lists its helical risings and settings for centuries. Your guide taps a shell tally counter, 20 tiny holes plugged with jade beads, and slides 1 bead to mark tonight's observation. 2 more beads and he'll close another cannon of data ready for scribes to ink on bark paper and priests to spin into prophecies about harvests, marriages, or whether the next ballgame needs heavier padding. A soft thud announces a second astronomer arriving with a tray of pitaya juice. Ah, your old numeracy fuel. The seeds crackle in your teeth like static as you sip, and suddenly the air feels charged, each star humming a private frequency you only notice when sugar and astronomy mix. Your host turns a shell trumpet upside down to use as a scoop and sprinkles ground mica over a bowl of water. The surface becomes a portable sky, glittering points mimicking constellations. He tilts it gently, modelling how the Milky Way arches through seasons. A watery rehearsal for infinite theatre. He whispers that tonight's data will join records stored in a chamber beneath the pyramid, stacked in wooden boxes wrapped with deerskin to foil humidity. Historians still argue whether those archives serve purely calendrical functions, he confides, or whether kings consulted them to choose auspicious days for war, numbers wielded like obsidian blades. He shrugs as if to say politics is older than stone. Clouds steal across the horizon, and an apprentice lights resin torches set into corner sconces. Their glow paints your mirror gold, then copper, then bronze, like time-changing metals in fast forward. The astronomer adjusts a bamboo tube fitted with crosshairs, an instrument you'd call a theodolite if it weren't lashed together with hemp and faith. He lines it on Jupiter and notes the altitude on a shell scrimshaw. You ask, quietly, how these measurements translate into everyday life. He smiles. Tomorrow's maize planting schedule, the timing of a princess's betrothal, even that spicy atole vendor's tax deadline, all orbit heavenly math. A cool gust sighs over the platform, and the torches gutter. For a moment, everything leans dark except Venus and one bright ember where Jupiter hangs. You think back to dawn's bloodletting smoke, market chili haze, coronation sparks, each ritual tethered to fire. Up here, the sky provides the flames, cold but insistent, and the astronomers merely trace where they lick the horizon. Your guide reaches into a bark cloth pouch and produces a palm-sized jade disc engraved with concentric rings. He sets it on the floor and spins it. The rings blur into a single green eye staring upward. He explains that each ring tallies 1 synodic cycle of Venus, 5 rings completing roughly 8 solar years, the sacred loop when celestial and earthly calendars reset like synchronized heartbeats. Legend claims that rulers planned major building projects to conclude on the 5th spin, ensuring cosmic applause. He nudges the disc your way. When you spin it, the jade hums against limestone, a purring promise that numbers can be toys if handled softly. Quirky terrain alert. Apprentices tote a clay pot brimming with glowworm paste. They daub it onto sighting stones so the edges fluoresce, a bioluminescent outline guiding night measurements. The eerie green halos make each stone resemble a tiny portal. For an instant, you imagine stepping through to find scribes on the other side already recording your eventual arrival. Mid-observation, a horned owl lands on the parapet, head swiveling 270 degrees to audit your work. The astronomer bows politely. Owls, he whispers, fairy dreams between sleepers and the star gods. Considering your growing drowsiness, you suspect tonight's freight will be heavy. The owl blinks slowly, approves of your posture and lifts off, its wings slicing the air in near silence. The last bead slides on the tally counter. The astronomer exhales, low and satisfied. Venus kisses the tree line, extinguishing itself behind palm silhouettes, and the apprentice marks the exact second on a charcoal stick, scored with notches. Data captured, the crew begins tidying. Mirrors wrapped in jaguar cloth, bamboo tubes slotted into cedar cases, mica water tossed over the edge where it descends in a shimmering arc, fallen starlight feeding jungle ferns. Before you descend, your host hands you a narrow strip of bark paper. On it, in charcoal strokes, is tonight's glyph series. A serpent eye for Venus, a dotted bar for cycle count, and a twist signifying witness. You fold it carefully, sliding it beside the clay spiral from the scribe chamber. Proof that you, too, inked your gaze onto the cosmic ledger. Down the staircase, torches line each landing, their flames bowed by a gentle breeze that carries resin scent and distant drum echoes. Step by step, your knees loosen, brain lifting anchors, thoughts unspooling into lazy orbits. You picture the mica galaxies swirling in that bowl, your own reflection drifting among them, tiny but recorded, another bead on the shell counter click-clacking towards someday. Halfway down, you pause to look back. The platform now floats in darkness, but for a single glowworm halo marking the primary sighting stone, a soft green eye winking goodnight. Under it, the jungle exhales clouds of mist that roll like tidal waves of sleep over Tikal. You ride one down, sandals tapping time to a rhythm slower than heart, faster than dream, ready to merge tomorrow's duties with tonight's drifting calculation. The dawn air smoulders with humidity. A thick quilt draped over the maze terraces that unfurl east of Tikal like green ripples caught mid-splash. You shuffle behind a line of farmers whose straw capes glisten with dew, their footsteps muffled by soil that drinks the morning chorus of tree frogs and distant howler grunts. Every few paces, someone flicks a pinch of copal onto a clay censer strapped to a mule's back. The smoke coils upward in lazy helixes, searching for clouds that have yet to clock in. Mainstream historians tell us these terraces once produced staggering yields, thanks to raised field irrigation and a crop rotation scheme tight enough to impress any modern agronomist. But statistics fade beside sight and scent, tassels nodding in slow motion, jade parrots pinwheeling overhead, and the earthy perfume of damp corn leaves, blending with incense that smells faintly of last night's coronation fire dance. Ahead, a small wooden platform juts above the tallest stalks, and you spot the chanter, an elder wrapped in a faded indigo shawl, cheeks painted with the same spiral glyph of breath you tucked away in your pouch. He strikes a turtle shell drum, lower in pitch than the coronation instruments, more intimate, like a grandmother's heartbeat booming through a pillow. The farmers fan out along irrigation ditches, each carrying a gourd filled with ground chili, crushed cacao shells and, quirky tidbit inbound, powdered crocodile dung, once believed to lure rain gods by mimicking the fertile musk of swamp nests. You catch the tangy, earthy smell and recall Dawn's reality check near Temple 1. You probably won't survive this if you inhale too deeply. Still, you lean closer, curiosity trumping caution. The chanter intones syllables that wobble like heat mirages, each phrase ending on a soft glottal stop that feels more exhale than consonant. His assistant rattles a clay pot of seeds, providing percussion as delicate as peppercorns rolling across a countertop. Your fingers trace the bark paper glyph of Venus from last night, now warm against your chest, and you realize these chants too are a kind of astronomy. Words orbiting hopes, pulling clouds from beyond the horizon's edge. One farmer steps forward, scoops a handful of the spicy, fragrant mix, and scatters it onto the soil. Copal smoke envelops the grains. The scent lifts, then slides away on a shy breeze. Others follow, chanting in overlapping rounds until the air thrums like a hive of sleepy bees. Your turn arrives. You dip your hand into the gourd. The powder is cool, gritty, and oddly sparkly. Someone snuck in mica flakes, perhaps to dazzle the sky's attention. You fling it wide, flecks shimmer briefly before dissolving into the green ocean of maize. Rain remains stubbornly theoretical. Historians still argue whether the Maya preferred the cloud-herding song you just croaked through or a rival melody recorded at Yaxchilan that involves double the syllables and a chorus of reed flutes. One scholar insists the difference equates to an extra inch of rainfall per month. Another calls that claim hogwash draped in footnotes. Up in his platform, the elder seems unfazed by academic squabbles. He simply shifts keys as if hedging his bets by weaving both melodies together. A sudden hush ripples through the terraces. Leaves rustle like paper fans. You glance skyward and spot a distant smear of slate grey creeping over the tree line. Clouds, tentative but present. The chanter pauses, raises a conch shell, and blows a note so low it rattles your molars. Farmers answer with whistles carved from deer bone, their tones spiralling upward to meet the descending rumble of thunder far away. It's less a duet than a polite negotiation. We give song, you give rain. A warm wind lifts, flaring your tunic like a sail. The censer smoke changes direction, trailing sideways before curling downward in fat, lazy rings. Someone laughs, a light sound, half disbelief, half relief. You feel the first droplet kiss your forearm, cool through the rising heat. Then another spats onto a maize leaf, darkening it to emerald ink. Within seconds, the terraces buzz with pattering applause as the sky releases a steady curtain. The chanter descends, sandals squishing in fresh mud. He dips fingers into a gourd of cacao honey mash and smears a dab onto each farmer's forehead. A ritual energy boost and, apparently, a thank you note to the thunder god. When he reaches you, he chuckles at the copal stains on your sleeves and traces a tiny zero on your brow, as if acknowledging your new appreciation for placeholders in cosmic equations. The sweet paste drips to the tip of your nose. You lick it, tasting sugar, earth and subtle chili, breakfast of rainmakers. Quirky aftermath, a young girl sprints among the rows, planting shards of broken pottery upright in the softening soil. She explains this keeps mischievous wind spirits from uprooting seedlings, because everyone knows spirits are clumsy after rainfall. You join her for a few shards, nudging them gently into place. They wink like tiny sails catching puddle reflections, an impromptu art installation dedicated to plant defense. Thunder rolls closer, yet the sky's anger feels benevolent. Maize stalks sway, relieved of dust. The crocodile dung sparkle fades into the mud where it belongs, performing whatever biochemical voodoo ancient farmers trusted. You tip your head back, letting rain stream off your eyelashes. Each droplet is warm from its cloud journey, yet cool enough to settle the lingering heat of pitaya juice and balche hanging in your blood. A whistle signals retreat. Farmers hoist woven reed mats over their heads, forming a moving roof as they snake back toward the village path. You join them, mud sucking gently at your sandals with each step. The girl with the pottery shards leads the way, her laugh bouncing like tennis balls off the maize. Everything smells multiplied: chlorophyll, wet limestone, and the faint metallic tang of incense that survived the downpour. As you exit the terraces, a rainbow teases the horizon, colours blurring at the edges as if still unsure of their wardrobe choices. You recall the sighting stones glowing under glowworm paste, another spectrum conjured by human hands. Whether rain is summoned by chant, dust, or mere meteorology no longer matters. What counts is the hush in your chest, the slowed clock tick of your heartbeat, and the way raindrops drum, soft lullabies on the reed mats. Back on the sack bay, water rivulets etch temporary glyphs across the limestone, tiny rivers that will evaporate by noon, yet leave whispered traces on your memory. You pat your pouch, clay spiral, rubber ball, bark paper, star chart, and add a damp leaf as a souvenir of rainfall earned by song. The leaf glitters with residual mica, proof that eccentric sparkle sometimes works. By the time the terraces disappear behind a veil of mist, your eyelids feel heavy as jade discs. Each blink lasts longer, images stretching into syrupy frames that slide seamlessly one into the next. Chilly sting, ball-court thunder, coronation sparks, glowworm halos, and now maize leaves applauding rain. They merge into a single story, moving at the pace of dripping water and distant thunder. A perfect rhythm for slipping into the next dream. Rain-washed air delivers you back to the great plaza just as torches spark awake for evening, their flames wobbling like candlelit reflections in a bowl of fresh cacao. Long reed tables snake between Temple 1 and the ball court, draped in cotton runners dyed the very indigo that once swirled inside coronation braziers. Clay platters arrive in waves, pepita-stuffed tamales wrapped in banana leaves, steaming bowls of turkey tail stew prized for its gelatin richness, and maize flatbreads stamped with glyphs that spell prosper. The aroma is so lush you briefly forget that only hours ago you flung crocodile dung glitter into a cloudless sky. A herald clangs a copper bell, and the new Ajay steps forward, jade mask now retired in favour of a simpler feather circlet. He lifts a gourd of frothy cacao, its foam crowned by chili powder, for courage, and invites you, a road-weary witness, to drink first. The crowd chuckles at your widened eyes when the chili bites back. Tradition demands surprise. Mainstream historians note that royal feasts doubled as diplomatic theatre, each swallow reinforcing alliances more effectively than any stone treaty. You wipe froth from your lip and bow, tasting both hierarchy and hospitality in equal measure. Nearby, musicians pluck turtle-shell lyres, their melodies looping around conversations the way vines twine sabre trunks. Merchants trade gossip about jade prices in distant Copan. Warriors boast of ball court heroics, all conveniently favouring their own side. Apprentices rerun the rain chant in soft falsetto, still thrilled at its apparent success. You spot the iguana mascot perched on a bench, tail flicking to the music like a tiny metronome. Time for the offering. Attendants distribute palm-sized jade slivers, each engraved with a unique glyph. Yours depicts a serpent coiled around the spiral for breath, a neat callback to the clay shard nestled in your pouch. Quirky tidbit. The assistant who hands you the stone confides that some artisans rub jade with crushed fireflies, so the glyphs glow faintly, to light the gods' reading lamps. You hold the piece close. Sure enough, it shimmers with an inner green ember. A slow procession winds toward a limestone shaft at the plaza's edge, an aperture leading to a chultun repurposed tonight as a portal to Xibalba. One by one, feasters whisper personal hopes into their stones: higher maize yield, a baby's safe birth, fewer chili splinters during bloodletting, then drop them into the darkness. Historians still argue whether such cash is honoured Chak, the rainbringer, or the revered ancestors who keep cosmic ledgers balanced. But the stones don't wait for consensus. They clink below in a gentle cascade, a subterranean applause accepting human requests. Your turn comes. You cup the jade, recall the day's tapestry. Obsidian dawn blades, rubber thunder, pearl-eyelid astronomers, mica stars swirling down temple steps. Then breathe a wish into the glyph. May all this grandeur tuck itself gently into tonight's dreams. The stone leaves your fingers with surprising warmth, kissing the shaft edge before disappearing. A hush blooms, as if everyone inhales the same sigh. And then torches snap louder, resuming their crackle. Feast resumes, but softer. Plates emptying into satisfied silence. Scribes circulate, logging who offered which glyph, a bureaucratic aftertaste for the gods. A servant pours you balch, diluted with rainwater harvested only hours earlier. It tastes like diluted thundercloud, floral and forgiving. Across the plaza, young dancers spin glowworm halos in slow arcs, mimicking the sighting stones that guided Venus last night. You lean back against a temple stair, belly warm, eyelids drooping under the comfortable weight of roasted maize and receding excitement. Songs shift into lullaby tempo. Turtle shell strings hum low. An elder storyteller gathers nearby children and begins recounting how the maize god once slept inside a seed, until a kindly jaguar warmed the soil with its own body heat. The kids ooh at the feline heroics, and you adjust your head on folded arms, lulled by the rhythmic click of a scribe's stylus, etching the evening's minutes into a travel ledger you'll likely never see again. The plaza lanterns blur into fireflies, and the limestone beneath you cools, coaxing any remaining vigilance to slide away like beads on a counting shell. Just before your thoughts fully untether, You hear the storyteller mention a crocodile dung sunscreen, your earlier callback surfacing once more, now cast as the maze god's comedic misstep on his first day in the sun. The children giggle, thunder rumbles approval far off, and you let the sound tuck itself under your ribs, content to float along. The feast's last torch gutters low, its flame folding into a soft red ember. You feel every muscle lengthen, as though sinew itself unknots, inviting bone to rest and breath to travel at an easier stride. Voices hush to murmurs, then to silhouettes of sound, until even laughter becomes a warm vibration weaving through the night air. Above, the sky unwraps layer after layer of deeper indigo, stars sliding into their familiar patterns, steady beacons charting tomorrow's chores, yet insisting on nothing for the moment. Night creatures resume gentle duties. A cicada clicks a measured tempo, distant frogs provide bass so smooth it might be heartbeat, and a breeze combs the palm fronds with patient fingers. Each element blends into a single, slow-rolling hush that startles over the plaza, draping every pyramid and person in shared stillness. Breath after breath, you notice how lungs no longer strain for air, but drink it in long, satisfying draughts, like rivers easing into wide bends. Thoughts drift loose, untethered from daylight's structure, floating towards soft horizons where rubber ball echoes melt into turtle shell drums and rain chants become quiet hums vibrating behind your eyelids. The jade token you offered feels miles below, yet its warmth lingers, spreading outward in gentle waves that cushion mind and limb alike. Memories slip into place like feathers inside a pillow, weightless, comforting, perfectly arranged for rest. Allow the hush to deepen. Let eyelids descend as lazy curtains, blocking what little torch glow remains. Feel the stone beneath you steady and cool, a reassuring cradle older than any worry you could name. In this vast, timeless theatre, the final scene has faded to darkness, and the audience, gods, ancestors, and sleepy travellers alike, sighs in contented unison. Nothing more is asked of you tonight than to breathe, to drift, to dream.